Yes, it's time to make a model of the monster Grendel who attacks a great hall in the story of Beowulf, and Beowulf himself turns up to attack Grendel. So we're building a monster. Well now, here's something new. Don't know that I've done anything like this ever. I did do a weird, I think it was a Lindbergh kind of vignette of some skeleton pirates on a raft with a barrel chopping somebody's chains off. That might be the last time I did that. I was probably about 12. Masterbox. I had a look on their website. They do some very odd things. And they do these. World of Fantasy, this is my land. Who's saying that? Is she saying that? Or is he saying that? And this poor little fella's... Anyway, bit of variety. And this is what you get. 3 figures. Yeah, she looks like girlfriend material, doesn't she? And these two don't. And not a lot of parts. Straightforward grey. Very nice little expressive face on the bloke being picked up. He's not too happy at all, is he? There's the beautiful heroine. And a nicely sculpted costume. Gonna sneeze. And predominantly, here's our ugly ogre. And he's rather good. This here is an unsophisticated wash. I established it last night and then put slightly thicker paint over some areas, particularly around the torso, the back and that bare thigh down to the bottom left, and then let the wash seep into just about everything else. And what I'm going to do now is take this out and let it dry in the sun, because we're outside, and then put something else in the wash, and slowly the wash will dry up in the pot. So I'll put smaller and smaller things into it to make the most of it, and then hopefully this anatomy will dry out of its own accord. Then I'll put it together and then I'll blend colours in. Otherwise, you know, he'll look like he's made out of different parts, won't he? Anyway, there we go. So I have nothing more to say. And it's come out okay under the circumstances. Perhaps a slightly lighter background might have been a wise idea. What have I got that might do better? Oh, thrills. What great camera work. My goodness, the man deserves an Oscar. Right, that's a little bit better. No, not a lot, but anyway. So it's had a wash. That's about where we are with it. Most of it's come out alright. What I'm going to start doing is putting it together, so that then I can literally paint over the cracks. Kind of blend it all together, then do a bit of highlighting, see if it needs another wash, that kind of thing. Maybe wash and then highlighting. Well, I'll know when I put it together, won't I? So, I'll do that. Torso and legs together, that's all. And this is a perfect example of why now is the time to glue, because there are dramatically different shades, if not completely different colours, between the two sides. So, needs blend in together, basically. That's a Grendel-esque head, if ever I saw one. His hair's a bit weird. It's made up of 3 pieces. Actually, he looked possibly more plausible without any hair at all. But I think Grendel was a bit hairy. Can't remember. And here we have a grotty grim looking Grendel without a head, and some what you might loosely call clothes to put on. Where are we up to? I think let's make sure the glue dries and then deal with some of the very heavy seams. He's got some very odd stuff going on him, but that's alright, he's a monster. Grendel so far, he's still quite a ghastly greeny colour, which I like. The seams are really quite heavy. I've used quite a lot of filler and they're still showing up. I wonder if this company have a big investment in filler manufacture. Probably the worst fit is this fur. There we go. If you get one shoulder to join, such as that one's out, and at its furthest it's out by probably just over 2 millimeters, which is quite a lot on this fella. It doesn't matter a lot, does it? Because he's a grotty fellow and it's a ropey bit of fur, but the fact that the edges are pretty straight just screams out of the fact that it's not a very well made object. So I'm going to try and compress it fairly well, and if necessary actually add some hair to the man's head, monster, and work it over, or maybe just fill that gap and make it look like fur. I don't know, I'll have to put it on and see how bad it is. Hooray for Minky. While everything's drying, we need to go elsewhere. What we need is a man, a victim, somebody of the correct scale for the Great Hall who's being given a hard time by Grendel. So what we have here are these cavalrymen, and they basically, regardless of which box you have, whether it's late Roman or it's Gothic cavalry, it's basically the same stuff with just differences in detail. So the horses are the same, the torsos are the same, some of the arms are the same, but the heads, the shields, the flags, the Draco standards and the weaponry are different. So I'm going to get one of these torsos and I'm going to there's a Draco standard and some Gothic heads. Yes, so while well, what we need is one of these torsos, and that will provide us with a struggling man. Now what I'll do is, this sounds terrible, I'll break his legs off and then reattach them in more vigorous positions, and that way we will have a fella who's up for a fight. And then I think I'm going to have to use a bit of probably filler won't do, I suspect milliput, to create a pulled up, well, not pulled up, that sounds bad, a clutched male shirt, and I think we should have a figure which will look good, I hope. Remotely good, something. Well, I managed to lose some scenes, but here's Grendel holding the torso with the more vigorous legs, of course, and I've put a little bit of the milliput on to create a folded male shirt. So yes, missing scenes, and I put his head on and his arms on, and you get this, the finished item. Hooray! So who is Grendel, I suppose? Well, he's a monster who appears in the very old heroic poem Beowulf, which, well, the copy that survives was probably written down in the 800s or 900s. There's a lot of argument about that, so there's a lot of Christian overlay, but the basics of it, the story, probably began and was being shaped from probably the 4 or 500s AD. So it is an ancient piece of storytelling. And Grendel appears very early on. He's associated with giants, and he is not happy that somebody has built a great hall not too far from where he lives. And it's worth having a couple of little sections from Beowulf itself to see what it says about Grendel. So this is his sort of first appearance, and this is from a new-ish translation which you can find online at the Poetry Foundation. I don't know who did it because it's anonymous, this translation. So somebody very clever seems to have done it though. And it goes, little section on Grendel. It says, Grendel this monster grim was called, March Reaver, mighty in moorland living, in fen and fastness, fief of the giants. So it gives us an idea of where he lives. Fenland is fascinating. The story might actually come from the Baltic, around the lands that are now Denmark and Sweden. So it's Scandinavian, Germanic. So the fens play a very big role in sort of the low islands in the Baltic and around the shores of Denmark. In England, they're very common around East Anglia, and the Wash, which sort of divides East Anglia from Lincolnshire, is a strange place. I've only got a couple of photographs of it, but I went there ages ago and it was extraordinary. I should have taken some film, but here's just a couple of images of Fenland and then the Wash. The Fenland sort of slips out into the Wash, which is a strange piece of the English landscape, which doesn't know if it's land or water or fresh water or sea or any of that. It changes its mind on a regular basis. So this is the lair of Grendel. Another piece from Beowulf that kind of explains his motivations says this: then that obdurate being, the one which waited in places of darkness, suffered tormentedly for a time, because each single day he heard the loud noise of celebration in the hall. So it's the great racket that humans make. Strangely, that seems to be what upset the gods in the Middle East, Enki and his chums, and caused the flood which Noah is associated with. So the noise of humans gets on everybody's nerves. Somehow I feel a little bit sympathetic towards Grendel. And so, in darkness, he goes to the hall and pulls out a bunch of warriors who are sleeping under and on top of the benches, as they did, because they'd had a lot to drink. And he takes them home and eats them. And it goes like this: he went forth to find at fall of night that haughty house, and heed wherever the ring-danes out-revelled to rest had gone, found within it the atheling band asleep after feasting, and fearless of sorrow or of human hardship. Unhallowed, grim and greedy, he grasped betimes, wrathful, reckless, from resting places 30 of the thanes, and thence he rushed, fain of his fell spoil, faring homeward laden with slaughter, his lair to seek. So the remainder wake up with a bit of a hangover and find 30 of their chums have gone. And it just gets worse and worse. Eventually Beowulf hears of their plight, and he's a young warrior who wants to make a name for himself. So he turns up with a boatload of chums, and they decide to take on Grendel. If you don't know it, I won't spoil it. But that's Grendel for you. Well worth a little model. And there he is, with one of the what did it call him? One of the warriors. I think he called him an atheling. An atheling is a kind of princely warrior. So high-ranking folk are getting chomped up. that winds up Grendel in the Great Hall. As you can see, there's some figures to come at some point. I'm sure they'll have a Great Hall in the background or something, so there may be a reoccurrence of it. I've got 2 Dark Age forts to do, so look out for them at some point. And thank you for watching, as ever. Brilliant. Let's go forward and make some more. I don't know what it'll be, but it'll probably be a bit chaotic as usual. So thanks again. See you soon.